How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Hey, it's me and Dr. Joe on the Me and Dr. Joe Show, right here live on WATD.
Nicely done, Mark. I'm still getting used to the rebrand, folks. This used to be the Dr. Joe Show. Now, Me and Dr. Joe. But I'm curious.
And you are me, listener.
Exactly right. Me and Dr. Joe. It's not just Mark Stiles. It's you. It's our guests. It's everybody who we get to associate with in this remarkable feature of shows that we have. I want to just give a quick shout out, Mark, before we start. Folks, you listen to that song, the opening song, that's starting with Sophie singing. That's Sophie Schrand. And I just want to give a shout out to Sophie because today she was featured on NPR, Boston Public Radio with the Museum of Science about her cross-country trip and all the amazing things that she's doing as she worked with the Museum of Science in this documentary. So, folks, it's going to be starting next week. The previews are out, the trailers are there, but it will start being aired next week. And I want to thank the Boston Museum of Science for supporting it as well. So
that's so awesome. That's so awesome. How many episodes?
I think that they're continuing to work on it. They have
cool
terabytes of footage. I mean, think of it, from Los Angeles to Boston and back in an electric vehicle. Can it be done and can it be fun? And yes, it is amazing. And Sophie has this, just this great outlook on the world. I mean, she sees the good in things. She sees the science in things. She truly is an optimist, which I think is a great way that we can perhaps segue directly, Mark, to our guest for tonight.
Optimism for the win. Today's guest is a clinical social worker and the founder of the Playmaker Project, a nonprofit. It's dedicated in providing training, resources, and ongoing support for childcare professionals, enabling those professionals to use the power of play to build healing, life-changing relationships with children that are in their care. For over 30 years, Steve Gross has pioneered innovative play-based trauma interventions for communities around the world. Steve's work is rooted in his belief that play is the universal language of children and that adults must speak it fluently in order to help them heal, grow, and thrive. His unique approach has been instrumental for communities around the world facing large-scale trauma events. Steve's work has been celebrated by international trauma experts and was featured as an example of how play can be used in therapy in the longtime #1 New York bestseller, The Body Keeps the Score. Steve believes that how we care for our kids, especially our most vulnerable and wounded kids, will influence how far we evolve as a society. Join Steve in his mission to transform children's lives by investing in the professionals who serve them. You can learn more about this at lifeisgood.com. That's right, lifeisgood.com. Please meet Steve Gross.
Yeah.
Wow, Mark, that was quite an intro, man. I mean, I want to bring you with me everywhere I go.
I'm in. I want to be there.
We got to negotiate that, Steve.
Okay, I got you. Dr. Joe, you can come along too, man.
We're in.
Okay.
Steve, it's so good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the show, for all that you're doing. My gosh, tell us about Life is Good and the Playmaker Project and where things are at now.
Well, I mean, I don't even know where to begin, except that it's a beautiful gift that I get to do this work. I have to kind of pinch myself because to get up every day and to do something that you love with people that you love, where you feel like you're making a contribution, and you're doing a little something to make the world a little bit of a better place for other people. To me, that's a dream come true. I wouldn't change it for for anything. And you probably know the clothing brand Life is Good. And if somebody were to say, okay, well, Life is Good, they sell T-shirts. People at Life is Good would say, no, that's not what we do. That's not our mission. Our mission is to spread the power of optimism. And the T-shirt or the clothing or the artwork and the wisdom that we share there, that's just a vehicle. And I grew up with Bert and John, and those are the founders of Life is Good. And I was um, doing a therapeutic play program for homeless and impoverished preschoolers while they were starting Life is Good. And at one point, when they became fairly successful, they were always helping and supporting the work that I was doing. And Bert and John were like, dude, we should be doing this work together. Like, we'd like you to take your work and bring it under the Life is Good umbrella because we're doing the same thing. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? We're doing the same thing. You're selling T-shirts. I'm a clinical social worker working with kids who have experienced a lot of trauma using play. How is that the same thing? And Bert very wisely said, we have different whats, but our why is the same.
Yeah.
And our why is to spread the power of optimism. And that's exactly what you're doing. So we can do it through T-shirts and apparel and artwork, but we can also do it by supporting the frontline folks that are taking care of and helping our youngest, most vulnerable kids. And so we are really united as an integrated brand. One side is the for-profit side, and 10% of net profits support the charitable work. Or actually, I don't even like to say charitable work, the social work that we do. And that the social work.
Why don't you like to say charitable? See?
I don't know, man. Like, when I think about charity, I think of like holding your hand out and saying, please help the poor, help this. And I prefer to think of our work as we're social entrepreneurs. And like, I don't know, there's a vibe. I can't really say when I think of charity, I think of somebody giving potentially out of obligation all these poor people. And there's a saying that I learned when I was in Haiti that in charity, the giving hand is always on top. And I like to not think, I think of it more as a reciprocity. We're helping kids that need help, but those kids are going to help us someday.
Right.
That there's a reciprocity to this work. And so, when we invest in kids, it's not out of charity. It's out of a wisdom that says, if we want a society that works, we have to really protect our world's greatest natural resource, and that's kids.
Yeah. And that's the future. I mean, that's what kids represent, right? So we are thinking ahead by saying, okay, and I love the word contribution. I mean, that's the word that you choose, and I absolutely agree. That's who we are as human beings. And
Well, yeah, I mean, and I use it very intentionally, Dr. Joe,
Yeah.
because, when I was doing a lot of heavy duty trauma work, and I was always doing Project Joy, but I was also working at the trauma center doing psychological trauma response and helping in communities where really horrible things happened. And oftentimes you start to forget and you start to think of yourself as a rescuer and a savior. And as a rescuer and a savior, as human beings, we always will fall short. Eventually, we'll always fall short. And when I started to think about myself as a rescuer and savior, I almost burnt out. And then I started to change and think of myself as somebody who was making a contribution and that I was going to do the best I can. My dad used to tell this great joke. He would say, there's a pig and a chicken, and they're walking down the street and they see a sign and it says, bacon and eggs, 99 cents. And the chicken says, isn't it amazing that we live in a country where you can get a bacon and eggs breakfast for 99 cents? And the pig says, that's easy for you to say. For you, it's a contribution. For me, it's a total commitment. And I started to realize that if I was making that total commitment and putting so much of myself into this, that I was going to lose myself. And that I had to think of it more as a contribution, and a contribution in which you know, I always believe I receive more than I give. And that's the only way true social work can be done. Because if you give more than you receive, eventually you become depleted. And so I stay inspired because I recognize that I'm receiving way more from my work on a personal level than I'm giving.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more that that contribution, it's different than a rescue and save approach. And what I am very grateful for is we have sponsors who absolutely believe in the contribution approach, and which does, I must admit, rescue and save me. So let's hear from our contributors. We'll hear from our commercial break. I'll be right back with Steve Gross.
Hey folks, thank you for listening to the Dr. Joe Show. We've been investigating whether or not we want to bring sponsors into our podcast. What are your thoughts? Do you know somebody who might be a good partner with the Dr. Joe Show, who may want to align their product or service with the Dr. Joe Show? Think about it.
And we're back. Thank you, Dave. We are here with the one and only Steve Gross of Playmakers, doing exceptional things, elevating amazing people, helping the service of others. And we were digging into this service of others a little bit during the commercial break. I think it was a commercial break. And you know, Steve, you were saying that you can give and give and give. And if you give your whole self, then you run on empty. And Dr. Joe was pointing out some of the conversations we've had in the past about the service of others and how I don't struggle with it, but I definitely get very deep into, am I doing this for me? Because it feels so good to serve others. And there's this not imbalance, but this complexity for me to continue to serve, because on the flip side of what you're saying, if I serve every piece of me, I'm going to run out. But in the flip side of it, if there's nothing in it for me, am I going to do it?
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny that you say that, because like, I think you should. I mean, I hate to say I think you should, but don't worry about it. Yeah, it's selfish. It's a beautiful selfishness. It doesn't matter. Like, it's what I like to, I think it was the Dalai Lama who talked about wise selfishness. You know, you have a purpose in your life. People don't, when you do something out of obligation, it doesn't usually come across as very beautiful, and people feel it. So I remember, you know, the Dalai Lama talks about, if your purpose in life is to be a good human being and to elevate others, all the things that you do to reach that purpose are selfish in their serving your goal, your mission in your life. But the byproduct is helping. And so, like, you know, I remember Ayn Rand has a book called The Virtues of Selfishness. And she would use this example, like, bees don't pollinate flowers because they're obligated to. Jesus, I should really pollinate these flowers or people will suffer. No, they were born to do it. And they do it with this passion. It's part of, it's ingrained. And because they do it, the beauty and the gift that it brings to the rest of the world. So when I think about a great artist, you know, a great artist may be driven to create beautiful art. And then if that art inspires other people, then they're using their gift. And the byproduct is inspiration. So like, I am definitely selfish, but I don't put my self-interest over the well-being of other people. And what I mean by that is, I recognize that doing this work gives my life meaning. And it's part of my identity. And it's part of my mission. As my dad used to talk about, none of us has control over our birth or our death, but each of us has control over making somebody else's journey from birth to death better, because we were there to help along the way. And if that's your mission, then acting in that is achieving your own kind of selfish mission. It's different than just following a whim and desire. I think she used the example in a book that if you're watching a football game and your best friend calls you and says, "Hey, I just had a fight with my girlfriend and I need some help moving out of the apartment," but you really want to watch the football game, you might think the selfish thing is to just watch the football game. But if you're really wise and you think of what's in your best interest as a human being, you go, wow, having a really great friend and great friendships is more important than a football game. So I'm going to help my friend, not because I'm obligated to, because I've been very thoughtful about what's most important for me and who I am as a human being. So you're not making decisions that are just based on impulsive pleasures. You're really looking for who's the human being that you want to be in this world, and then acting in accordance to that.
I think the only thing that I would change is that we don't control people, but we do influence. And that's something that we're going to get to a little bit later on. But I could not agree more. We have so many choices every day about relationships. And yet, if you think about it, every single interaction with another human being is a relationship.
Absolutely.
You know, the foundation, I'm writing about this now, the foundation for that is trust. I think the foundation for all relationships are trust. And Steve, I don't know about you, but in my work with folks who have been challenged by trauma, that trust is a major challenge for them.
Yeah.
What do you think? How do you manage that?
Well, first thing I want to just say is I agree with you 100% about not controlling. And I don't know if I misspoke, but I was saying we have control over trying to help make somebody's journey from birth to death better.
Yes.
We don't have control over that. We can
Yes.
try to make a contribution.
I agree.
But what I will say is, I think one of the key things to trust is a person feeling that you see them, that you value them. There's a beautiful greeting in the Zulu language when two people meet each other, and the greeting is Sawubona. And Sawubona simply means I see you. And it's I see you, I see your humanity, I see your beauty. So whenever I've sat with someone who is suffering, that first thing that I need to establish is that I see them.
Yeah.
I see their pain. I see their vulnerability. I value them. I care. My dad used to always say too, and I found out later, I found it on a fortune cookie, so I know he didn't make it up, but that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And
Great phrase.
how you do that, especially when you're facing someone who is deep in grief, deep in fear, deep in pain, how you sit with that person. And I remember from the work in the trauma center, we used to joke, don't just do something, stand there. And it was the opposite of like, sometimes you just have to bear witness and sit with someone and allow them to feel the emotions that they're feeling and not have them feel that somehow you feel that you have to change them or fix them.
I agree. One of the things that I've realized over all the years is that every single person who has come to see people like us on some level feels less valuable. And we have the remarkable opportunity and privilege of simply reminding them of their value. And I think that is what we do. I mean, tell me a bit more about what the Playmaker Project is really about.
Well, the most important thing, really, if I think about what business we're in, it's the business of building healing, life-changing relationships with kids. And, in order to do that, if you're, let's say, a childcare professional, and I'll say, anyone, especially in your position, Dr. Joe, you show up and there's a client, well, you show up, you have a real serious professional skill set. You went to school, you studied, you worked hard, you have a skill set, an occupational skill set that most human beings in the world do not have. But that alone isn't going to get the job done. Because in addition to that professional skill set, you also show up with this human disposition, a vibe, an energy, your humanity. And so you show up warm, open, loving, compassionate, grateful, all of these things that make somebody a fine human being. And so when you take a professional skill set and you couple it with this optimal human disposition, well, that skill set can be put to work. But if you were to show up with your professional skill set, but you're showing up as closed and arrogant and disrespectful and impatient, well, that professional skill set doesn't help you very much. And especially with kids. I mean, with everybody, but especially with kids. So I think part of our work is how do we help somebody show up with their optimal disposition as a healer, as a guide, as a navigator? How do you show up filled with joy and love and inspiration and a sense of security and peace? Because those things, when I think about social and emotional well-being, they're caught by children, they're not taught to children.
Yeah.
And as adults, sometimes we have to learn that. And I mentioned before this idea, I know you mentioned it in the intro, Mark, that play is the language of children. It's how they communicate. It's how they connect. It's how they can attach. And if we don't speak their language and we're working with them, how do we expect to build relationships? And guess what? For most adults, man, it's PSL, play as a second language. We forgot how to speak it because we haven't spoken enough. And it's actually not that hard to learn again. And so that's part of our work, is helping care providers reconnect with that sense of joy and connection and wonder and engagement, and help to provide tools and resources on how they integrate that into their practice with kids, how they speak that language fluently, how they turn everything that they do into play. Because I don't think children should be doing anything but play.
Yeah.
And by the way, if people are saying, well, what about literacy? What about numeracy? That's play too. Play is about free and joyful exploration. And schools will be doing a lot better if kids feel when they're at school that they're involved in freely and joyfully engaging, connecting, and exploring with their world. That's what we want to do as humans.
Yeah. I think we are teaching the same thing with slightly different words, but the same thing. So what I teach to my folks is, it's not the Prozac, it's you. You are the medicine. You and the way you are interacting with that human being in front of you, that person, reminding their value, that's more powerful than anything. And I have the remarkable fortune that 3 times every show, I am reminded of my value by my sponsors. It is just the nicest thing that they could do for me. So with that in mind, we will take a commercial break. We'll hear from those people who value us, and we will be right back with Steve Gross to talk about playing. And I think what I'm going to ask you next, Steve, when we come back is, how did we forget? How did we forget about play? We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show.
Hey, folks, welcome back. So any thoughts? Do you listen to other podcasts? Do you see how they do the sponsors? Is there a way that they're utilizing sponsors that you enjoy or you don't enjoy? I listen to SmartList, and I really enjoy how the co-hosts share the voiceover for the product or service. It's really funny for the most part, but it's unique. It's them really endorsing. Does that work? What do you think?
Hey. Thanks, Dave. We'll take it from here. It's me and Dr. Joe on the Me and Dr. Joe Show, with you, the listener, playing the part of me. And we're here with Steve Gross of the Playmaker Project, a part of the Life is Good brand, doing amazing things, helping amazing people help others get through trauma. How do you determine where you're going to go? Where you're going to go and teach the word?
Well, it's one of the things that we've done for most of my career is, we've been kind of pulled into situations where we're kind of the best kept secret, and we're working really hard to change that.
Yeah.
But you get a call, and you get a call from Lahaina, Maui, and they say, hey, we got a community that really needs help. Or you get a call from Mississippi, or you get a call from Mattapan, or you get a call. And so we've grown very organically. And now it's funny because as the founder of the organization, um, I'm real, I call myself a chief playmaker because I'm not a typical CEO. I'm not a super strategic operational thinker. And so, now having good leadership in the organization that's saying, listen, it's wonderful that you're growing organically, but I think we have to be a little bit more strategic in many ways. And so I'm surrounding myself by people who are a lot smarter than me. Um, and, there's an organic growth because, the phone is always ringing. Um, and there's also now a little bit more of a strategic effort to really focus, especially in New England. I think we grew nationally really quick. And now it's like, hey, we want to be, we want to make sure that every child care, there's 2.2 million early childhood educators in the United States.
Wow.
That's a lot of people. And so when you start to break it up and you go, hey, let's get to all of them in Massachusetts first. Let's focus on New England. Let's begin to branch out rather than just kind of have a splattering all over the country. And so we're going to do a little of both, some strategic growth, but also that organic, because I don't like to say no. I don't say no. And one of the things that we've done is we created something called Playmaker University, which is a really vibrant digital learning platform that people can access from anywhere in the world. And we have a 15-hour Playmaker certification program that you can do all digitally and remotely. So even if we can't venture out and provide workshop or training, we can hook people into Playmaker University. And one of the reasons I was so motivated to do that was I never want to say no. Somebody calls me and says, I'm in Fairbanks, Alaska, and we want training and we have 3 staff people. Can you come out there? It may not be feasible. It may not be the best use of our resources to go to Fairbanks, but we can certainly say, hey, let us scholarship you to Playmaker University. And so technology has allowed us to do that. I didn't think it was possible because I felt like there's no replacing being in the room, but it's amazing the community that's being built just through Playmaker University. It's phenomenal.
So you've created a certification program. How do you do that?
Well, we have there's something called the CDA, and the CDA looks and say, I mean, first of all, the beautiful thing, Dr. Joe, is we can do whatever we want to do because we're a private nonprofit organization. So we can say, there's no national standards to be a certified playmaker.
Right.
I could say you got to jump rope 15 times and spin in a circle and eat a slice of pie, and that makes you a certified playmaker. Now, we didn't say that.
I can imagine you did
We
not.
needed our certification.
Yeah.
It looks deeply at, and so what's beautiful now is governing bodies that are looking at certifying childcare professionals look at Playmaker University and say, wow, this is so good that we're going to allow all 15 of those hours to qualify for someone who's going for their associate's degree in child development.
That's great.
So, we look at our work, it is really, I love to look at it as the art, soul, and science of caring for kids. There's a lot of deep academic and scientific work in simple things like play.
Yeah, but that's a huge validation for Playmaker as well. To say, you know what, the stuff that you're teaching other folks can be applied to other degrees. I think that is enormous and should not go unnoticed.
Well, and the best validation for me is the testimonials and the response that we get from playmakers who talk about how, this work has changed their whole outlook on working with children. They've changed their style. And not only that, but has had a deep impact even on their parenting and their relationships at home. Because this is really it's universal about how we treat human beings and how we connect with human beings and how we build life-changing relationships with human beings. That's what we're born to do. That's why our brains are so big.
Yeah.
With human beings, it's not survival of the fittest. It's survival of the most compassionate, the most connected, the most integrated. And, I think especially nowadays, man, more and more people feel so alone, and we don't do well alone. We're tribal creatures and we're herd animals.
I know. And we're in a world right now where there's so much stress and conflict because so many people gravitate to their one group, thinking this is the only way I'm going to be able to survive is to be with my group, which means the other group becomes more dangerous. We've got to change that. I mean, I think that's what's happening in trauma as well. Is here's this kid who, through no fault of their own, begins to believe that they're broken. Is that part of what you find, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think this, when you think about children, I mean, children want, in all human beings, we want to be seen and we want to be valued.
Yes.
And, we want to have purpose. I mean, children love to help. Children love to be needed.
Yes.
And to be seen and to be given a job, and they need to be adored. And we need to be adored. I mean, one of the best predictors of mental health as you get is to thinking how much you felt your parents adored you. And if they didn't, what did that mean about you? And so part of, Playmate, and there's certain kids, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful, there's certain kids that are just naturally very adorable. And they get plenty of adoration. And there's other kids who, for whatever reason, because of their experiences, they don't behave in a way that makes them adorable to others. And the biggest challenge is adoring kids who present as unadorable.
Yeah.
And how do you find the good in that child? And how do you smother that child with love? And how do you see their goodness and value them? I can remember just very quickly when I was working with a lot of really disturbed kids, I remember being frustrated one day and saying to my supervisor, this guy, Dr. John Rich, and I said, oh my God, what is wrong with these kids? And he looked at me very lovingly. He said, Steve, don't ever ask that question. He said, I want you to ask instead, what happened to these kids? And how are these kids trying to get their needs met?
Yeah.
And that changed everything.
Yeah.
And kids will behave in a way, sometimes really angry, sometimes really violent. That's their shell. That's their protective factor. That's them working out of a survival brain. And how do we figure out how to love and adore that child and how to help that child then love and adore themselves?
And that is exactly what the I am approach is about, is saying we're all doing the best we can. We don't have to like it, but let's try to understand it. Let's look again at why we do what we do. And you take the words look again, reverse them, again, look, again, to repeat something, look like a spectator. Let's respect why people do what they do without judging them. And that is part of the other phrase that I have for parents is it is much more rewarding to be amazed at who your child is than disappointed in who they are not.
Yeah.
Just be amazed at these kids. They're playing, right? And so one of the things that you spoke about was play, and that is the language of children. How did we lose that as adults, Steve? I mean, I still like to think of myself as a playful adolescent. It is the most difficult thing for my staff to have an adolescent as their chief medical officer. I mean, they all acknowledge that. I can't believe that this kid is my CMO. But how did we lose it, Steve? What happened?
Well, I think I think one thing is, again, like to look at play as an approach. So I define play as freely and joyfully engaging, connecting, and exploring with the world around you. It's not about the what you do. It's the energy with which you bring to everything that you do. So play is about exploration. And to be a player, I mean, if you think about it, like there's a great, I think Picasso said that every child is born an artist. The trick is remaining an artist as we grow older. And, just when we think about an artist, we're players. And so when I think about being a player, you need to have a player's mind, body, and spirit. And the player's mind is about being able to be here now, to be fully engaged in something. And I think as adults, we struggle to be fully engaged. I think we're all over the place. And it's sometimes tough to say, let me be fully engaged in this act, no matter what the act is. There's a beautiful Buddhist expression, when making rice, make rice. Like, can you be fully engaged? So if you can do that, okay, you're one third of the way to being a player. The second piece is the player's body, which is to feel it. You know, one of my favorite quotes from Bob Marley is, who feels it knows it. Can you feel the experience with every part of your body? Can you see it? Can you hear it? Can you smell it? Can you taste it? Can you touch it? All of those things, that wonder. And then the player's spirit, which is very difficult for adults, is to simply breathe, smile, and most importantly, let go of judgment. I can't tell you how many times people say, oh, I'd love to sing, but I have a terrible voice. Oh, I'd love to. I don't ski because I'm uncoordinated. Oh, I wouldn't do art. I'm a terrible drawer. Like, we limit ourselves because we can't just have the experience and let go and let go of judgment. And so when we think about the things, you know, that we're self-conscious about, get up and dance, get up and sing. You know, we're so tentative, and I think we forget. Even reading a story with my child, can I fully be here now? Is my phone on the nightstand? Am I looking here? Am I just waiting to get out? Or can I immerse myself in that story and be present and feel it, hear the words come out of my mouth, imagine it, feel the warmth of my child next to me as their head is cradled between my, you know, my shoulder and my collarbone, and just allow myself to be there. And as adults, we have to remind ourselves to do that. Even just being outside and I consider take your shoes off and walk in the grass on a sunny day. That's play. Feel the ground underneath your feet, the way the sun feels, the smell of the flowers or the trees. Listen to the animal. Like, we don't have to, play doesn't have to be, hey, I'm skipping rope, I'm tossing a ball around, I'm doing all this stuff. Play comes in many different shapes and sizes.
It's being connected as well. That play, that connection that we have with so many, which we have with our sponsors, which we're really grateful for. And so they're going to get to play their commercials right now.
You're the best segue guy in America.
We'll be right back with Steve Gross and the Dr. Joe Show, and me and Dr. Joe.
Hey, welcome back. And again, we're super grateful for you listening to the Dr. Joe Show. If you have anyone that you think might be a good sponsor, shoot us an email at drjoepodcast@gmail.com. DRJOE podcast@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts about the show too. We're wondering, are we talking to the trees, or are people really gaining value in this? Please let us know. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the show.
We're back on WATD 95.9 live right here on the South Shore, talking to Steve Gross, one of the most energetic people I think I've ever been in front of.
Yeah.
And you can tell what an amazing impact he's having on the youth of the world.
Yeah, our chief playmaker, Life is Good Playmaker Project. And I, you know, moving aside from the word nonprofit, there is so much profit in what we're doing. So I just, let's abandon that word nonprofit for a little bit, because it gives a weird connotation. You know, I know that you've got to run. So guess we're going to ask Steve the two questions right away. He's got a few minutes before he's got to take off. So given the IM, Steve, the IM is saying, you know, we are influence responding to 4 domains: your home, the social, the biological, and the I see, the way I see myself, the way I think other people see me. Because these domains interact, a small change can have a big effect. We don't have to change everything. Given what we're talking about tonight, what small change can you recommend to our listeners?
Well, I'd like to recommend like almost just 4 little micro tiny changes. And, you know, I think about one of them is this idea of allowing yourself to be selfish, in the sense of thinking how important your own joy is, and thinking and taking some time to think, what can I do to bring more joy into my life? And it doesn't necessarily, it might be things you're already doing, and just commit to maybe doing them a little bit more often or a little bit more mindfully, but not allowing that to be something that's saved if you have a little bit of extra spare time, and build it in. And, so someone like, I love to cook. Okay, cool. Well, I know, build in some time to explore a new recipe. If you love to garden, take some more time to do it, or to potentially to bring your whole presence into that. That's that idea of just bringing a little bit more joy into your life. I think there's another one. I look at social connection, and to think about the people, who do you want to play with? Who are the people in your life that elevate you, that actually fill you with positive energy, that you get something from, in terms of just a feeling you feel seen and valued? And write a list of those people down. And then reach out to them and say, hey, I was doing a little exercise and I thought about you. You are somebody that fills me. And let's make some plans to get together. Maybe it's to have coffee. Maybe it's to talk on the phone. Maybe it's to take a walk. But to pay attention to your social connection, because we need to improve those things. They're better for you than kale and going to the gym. The quality of your relationships is one of the best predictors of how healthy you will be as you grow old. So invest in those. And then I would also say the same thing for, what do I need to do to stay strong and balanced? And to really think about those things, whether it's nutrition, whether it's getting your own therapy, whether it's taking walks, whether it's exercising or meditating, prioritizing those things. Because in the words of the great jazz saxophone player, Gatemouth Brown, if you don't live it, it won't come out your horn. And so investing in your joy, in your connection, in your sense of strength and empowerment will allow you to share that with others.
Those are terrific.
Yeah.
Joy, play, relationships, balance. It makes so much sense. So small changes, folks. Work on those. The second truth of the I am. Everyone's got one. Everyone is interested through their I see domain, the way you see them. And that has an effect on the biological domain, because it feels different when you feel respected or disrespected. And you are part of someone's home or social domain. So the second truth of the I am, you control no one, you influence everyone. You get to choose the kind of influence you want to be. Steve Gross, founder and chief playmaker, the Life is Good Playmaker Project, optimist. What kind of influence do you want to be?
Well, I could say the easiest answer would be a positive influence. But I think the best influence is that if I can influence somebody to see their goodness and their own goodness and value, I don't need them to see my goodness and value. That feels nice. That's good for the ego. But what I really want is to leave them, if I can influence them, that they see their goodness and value. I think that's the best influence that I could have, I think.
Yeah. Reminding someone of their value. Steve, you do that all the time. You've done that for us today. You've done that for all of our listeners. I hope that you will accept that I see you as incredibly valuable. And thank you.
Thank you, brother.
So
I see the same, and I appreciate being, I was actually sitting here at 7 p.m. because I read my calendar wrong, because I don't pay attention to details. And then I finally realized. But I'm telling you, talking to you guys, Mark and Dr. Joe, what an immense pleasure for me to talk to. Your sincerity, your authenticity, your goodness and compassion come right through. And I'm leaving our conversation more energized and than I was when I got on. So thank you.
I'm so glad. I'm sorry that you were waiting for an hour, but I'm glad.
No, I was good, man. I found something to do.
All right.
Brush my hair.
You're welcome back, Ray. You're welcome back anytime. Let's continue the conversation. Thanks so much for being here. Steve Gross, founder of Playmaker. Life is Good.
Pleasure. Thanks, Mark. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
you.
Awesome
to meet you.
Awesome to meet you.
Wow, Dr. Joe.
Yeah.
That was an amazing guest.
Yeah, incredible.
They are doing wonderful things.
Yeah. Hey, listen, seems like we've got a few minutes. Tell me about how you doing? PMC.
Good.
You went on vacation. I've been listening to your Feel Good Friday and technology.
And you're coming to do a TED Talk at my upcoming event.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
taking some chances here and creating newness, scaring yourself every day, doing things that are outside the comfort zone and serving others. Yeah, we're putting on an event on September 12th at Levitate Backyard or Exicana. It's an event surrounding real estate. And if you've been watching the news, there's a lot of information in the news, a lot of new changes are happening. And what other guests can we think of to help folks navigate change and understand the human behaviors around navigating those changes than none other than Dr. Joe of the Dr. Joe Show and world renowned author and award-winning author, chief medical officer of Riverside Community Theater is going to be coming.
Community care. The
Community
theater is
care.
a different one. That's drugstore theater.
See.
Yeah.
Steve hasn't had my mind spinning. He was
wasn't he
so
great?
energetic.
Let's talk a little bit about that because we
So
don't get
awesome.
a chance often to talk about our guests.
No.
Maybe we should make this. Maybe we should make this part of our new ritual. With
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, we can kind of do the recap of the guest. He was so great, and you could tell right away, right as the show began, and you saw his sizzle reel with the Playmakers, and I mean, Life is Good. Obviously, the collaboration between those two organizations makes so much sense, bringing optimism to the world, and he's it. He's found that purpose. I mean, how many people out there are seeking to find that purpose, and he found it, and it's magical when you see somebody who has found that purpose, and it's super inspiring, Dr. Joe, and he's really inspired me, and it was great. It was really great to meet and listen to what he's doing.
Yeah. It's so important now, perhaps more than ever, which is kind of sad, but it's always important. Optimism is about the future. It's thinking good things will happen in the future. And right now, I think we are looking at a pessimistic future. But
come on,
we're still here, and I'm optimistic about it.
Good.
All right.
Me
All
too.
Right. Folks, it's great. Make sure you do some of those small changes, right? Some joy, some play, relationships, and balance in your life. We'll see you next week on Ready? Me and Dr. Joe. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Brush with madness. Is it sadness or just a show that